Alright, so this video will show how to do some extra render passes. Things like these wavy lines here. And I did it on this animation. It's a little alien guy you can download from Autodesk. Okay. Also, I will show, this is one shader. That's wavy lines. I will show transition, which will take this from, you can't see it now, but it's basically not visible, and then he is visible. If I did a little render snapshot, you'd be able to see this kind of gradation going up his legs. And then finally, the XRay Shader, which again you can't see, but it looks like that. Okay, so you may know how to do one of those, maybe not all three of those, and then I'll show you, what we can do with them after the fact. So let's start off with the XRay Shader. So we'll go to Surface Shaders. So I'm assigning a brand new Surface Shader to this. And because this is being used as a mask, it's not necessary that it goes under Out Color and Transparency for this one. But I typically like to do it because you do get slightly better results by doing it for both. So do it to color first, and then you can just copy it for trans. So I'm going to click on the map, and I'm going to go to ramp. And what this does is it puts a ramp on him based on its UVs. That's how it lines up. It looks like he has a wife beater on, which is hilarious. Hypershade, this little ball right here. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to drive. Come on. There we go. I want to drive the transparency on that. Let me click this and graph that out. There we go. So I'm going to drive this ramp's value, like where it picks it up on here, based on what's looking at the camera. So I'm going to add a sampler info. There it is. Just type it in, sampler info somewhere in there. You could also go to utilities and find it through there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I want to take this facing ratio and I want to connect it to this V-chord. So if I just go to facing ratio to V-chord, boom, whammo bammo, it's done. Now you'll see I connected to this side, but then it automatically connects it there. That works, right? So that's all we have to do really. And if I look at this here, it's still going to be the same rendering. But if I render this, make sure I made the right connection. Facing ratio, yes. To V coordinate, yes. And surface shader is attached to him. All right, I'm going to make this a bit more drastic. I'm going to pull the black there and pull the white here. Let's verify that we did that correctly. Facing ratio is connected to the V coordinate. All right, now just to double check, I'm going to go to my general editors, connection editor. I'm going to load on the left side. I will load the sampler info. On the right side, I will load my ramp. So facing ratio should get connected to V coordinate. All right, so it wasn't connecting it correctly here. There we go. So I'll just detach that. I don't know why I didn't connect it correctly. It should have. Yep, so it's going out here and then in there. There we go. And so now when I render this, it's playing nicely here. Like that's updating better than I was expecting it to. Let me go to my render settings and just make sure I don't have something else turned on in there that's causing that to do this. 75, that. I'll take this down to 2 just for fun. I don't have any motion blur on. There's no AOVs. Oh, it's not updating because I didn't hit this play button here. Nope, it's still updating. It's just not working. Let's try this one. All right, well, let's drop it onto the transparency 2, and then we'll see what happens. It might be because I've already connected things and changed some stuff that it's kind of freaking out, but let's see. So I'm going to go to my surface shader, and I'm going to middle drag my ramp onto transparency. Now what this is going to do is it's going to use the out color as my transparency, so that works perfectly because that's what I want to use. Sometimes they'll connect the alpha, and if there is no alpha going into this, or coming out of it, they have to make sure that I populate it somehow. Typically, I'll go into the ramp and just verify that under color balance or effects. I guess for this one there isn't one. Usually there's a alpha is luminance attribute, but it already knows that. All right, so now let's render this and see. There we go. All right, so now that looks like it's doing a better job. It is still acting funky. Let me drop my other one on here. XRay Shader. And you'll see that this one doesn't have anything on the color, but it still shouldn't matter. But it's hooked up the same way. So I think Maya or Arnold or both of them are just having a little fit. So that's what it should be hooked up as. Okay. Here is my XRay Shader. Graph that out, and you'll see the exact same setup where this facing ratio is dropped down into connecting to the V cord. That's how it's hooked up. Just to verify, let me graph this out. Facing ratio hooked up to the V cord. Yep, Maya's just having a little fit. Now we could just disconnect this. Oops. There we go. And make that white, and then just see if Maya is maybe a little bit happier. It all depends on how the software is feeling, especially when you're trying to lecture it. Nope, it's still acting funky. Yeah, so there's just something odd about that. It may just be the fact that I played with it, like I said, but you know, whatever. All right, so once you have this set up, then this ramp is really your gauge as to what this is going to look like. So whatever's facing the camera will be completely transparent, and then whatever is not facing the camera, like these edges, is going to be completely opaque. So as I pull this in, you can see how we're getting this kind of like glowy look to it. If we didn't have it on transparency, we wouldn't get that for like these pieces on the other side. It would just be the front pieces. Okay, so by pulling it this way, you'll see that I'm getting more white. And then by pulling it that way, we're getting more black showing through it. You could also invert this, so it's the other way. Come on. So now I'm crisping that up. Or if I go the other way, I'm like shrinking him. Now this could be good too for doing some kind of effects to the center of the stuff. Or just like some random things. Look at these as just different masks, like different things you may want to do. So for this one, I'm just going to keep it kind of like that. That looks like it's good. Maybe a little bit darker here. Good. Okay, so there's my mask. So what I do is I just make sure that I named that mask. This is my XRay Shader, so I just named it XRay Shader. So now we're going to do another one, and it's going to start off the same way. I'm going to, hopefully it doesn't end the same way. Hopefully it starts off the same way, but ends correctly. So Surface Shader, and then what I want to do is on here, I want to drop another ramp on it. But here's the difference, is that on this ramp, I'm going to right click and do it as a projection. So what this does is that it makes it projected, so just like we would do like a UV map on here, but it does it interactively. So if I look at the tabs, or if I go to the Hypershade and see what actually got created, here's Surface Shader 5, which is my newest one. I graph it out with this button. You'll see that instead of going right to, come on baby, right to the ramp, there's a projection here, and then it goes to the ramp. Now if I grab this Place 3D texture, and I scale this up, you'll see that's going to control how that ramp gets placed on here. Okay, so the bigger it is, then the more it'll fit. Now this way is not going to do too much because this direction is basically nothing in the ramp's value is exactly the same. You know, it's a gradient going up. So now if I go to the ramp here and I start to play with these, drop this here, pull this in. Okay, this there, that's the one. Right in the center, that's where the bottom of my ramp is. So as I pull this up, you'll see how we can use that. So now this would be like the transition one. That's exactly how I did the transition one, is I just started off either in black and then went to white, or white and went to black. And what's cool about this is that you could rotate it. And then you can animate it, so you can actually animate this ramp like growing on the character. You could have it follow them. You can have it kind of like wiggle so that you get some kind of, you know, randomness to it. For the line one, so then what we want to do is we want to take the ramp. I prefer this to use it so I can see. And if I just take the white and then I take the black, like that black. You can also turn this to none and there will be no interpolation. Okay, so you see how I'm making like lines inside here. Now to get these to be see-through, I need to take this projection and drop it onto the transparency. So I just middle drag it. Now here, if we open this up, okay, this still again is coming in here. Oops. If I hover my mouse over this line, it'll say out transparency to transparency. There is no transparency going into this because this projection has this transparency here, and you'll see there's nothing connected. So I need to middle drag my ramp onto transparency. So now I'll get transparency going into it. Now the issue is basically I want these black areas to be transparent, but because this word right here is transparency, black is opaque and white is transparent. So what I need to do is actually reverse this so that the white is visible and opaque, and then the black is transparent. So I'm going to actually add a reverse, and I'm going to middle drag this into the inputs reverse and just say out transparency to the input. Okay, and then on Surface Shader, I'm just going to middle drag this onto transparency. And then what that should give us is that. Perfect. Now remember inside Arnold that you have to click on your items and tell them that they are opaque or not opaque. Otherwise, when it renders, you won't get that. Okay, so now we can actually see the slices going through it. And depending on how, where's my ramp? Depending on how tight these slices are here, will dictate how thin they are out there. Okay, and you could even give them different colors if you wanted, you know, something specific as to what they're doing. Remember, you're just coloring, you just color the white ones, you wouldn't color the other ones. So you have red, green, blue. Might be a reason to do that, but whatever. Okay. Now you could also go to the Place 2D texture and you could add repeats. The U direction on the ramp would be going this way, left and right. So if I repeated this 55,000 times, it's the same thing. If I go to the V though, which is this, and I put in like 4, it'll repeat this texture 4 times, and then you get this neat pattern where you can actually see multiple areas. And there's 30, and so on. Okay, so it all depends on how much complexity you want there. Now, the same thing with this, because this is a projection, I can grab that place 3D texture and I can animate it. Now, it will probably not update perfectly inside here, if at all. Yeah, it's not doing anything. But what I can do is kind of keep the Arnold renderer up, and then I can look at it. Now, as I scale this down like this, you'll see that it's just kind of scaling these pieces down. Okay, so that may not be something I want to do. I may want to keep them all, the same proportions they were, like that. But I may want them to just kind of go off screen. Okay, so what I would do is under my ramp, I would come down here to color balance, and I would say my default color is going to be black. And then my wrapping, I would not wrap this in the V direction. And what that does is when it gets to the top of this ramp, or the top of this place 3D texture, it doesn't repeat over and over and over again. That's what it was doing before. So as I bring this down, basically I'll hit a point where it's not visible, and then I can animate it coming up. And then I could do that same thing for the other one, for the transition one coming on. Okay, so you can animate this thing scaling up and moving up at the same time. That's kind of how I did my little alien one. So if we look at what that looks like when it rendered, nope, there we go. Okay, so that's what this looks like. That's scaling and moving up. And I had some repeats on there. Okay, now you could use this as like a camera wraparound or whatever. I just want to show it on an animation just so you can see the effect of it. Okay. So then what I did is I just basically assigned each material and then rendered out each material. So that one. Here's my transition one, or my the transition one. Okay. Now there's other ways you could do this too if you wanted to. Close that. Under my render settings, under the AOVs, you can actually add different shaders. So I can go here to add, add custom, and I can call this transition. Click on the arrow, select AOV node, and let me go to my Hypershade. And where it says AOV trans, where it says default shader, this is my transition one. So if I just middle drag transition onto here, what it should do I should attach it. Oh, maybe that's not the way. Sorry. Maybe that's not it. Remove that. Let me do the default shader here. Nope. Oh, it probably only works with Arnold. Never mind. I thought that'd work. Yeah, so I just assign the transition material to this, and then render it out. Then assign the other material to it, then render it out. Then assign the other material to it, then render it out. Making sure that you change the name for each one of those. So this is wavy lines, and then there'd be transition, and there would be X-ray. I also made sure that my camera was set up. There's my camera. Okay. Now, depending on how many cameras you wanted to do that for, you would have to make sure you have each one of those listed. So you couldn't just do it for one camera. If you want it for all of them, you'd have to do it for all cameras. If I have 12 cameras, I want this effect on all 12 of them. I have to go through the process of rendering out each one of those cameras. Now, if you had 20 objects, like this one is pretty simple because it's just the character's skin, but let's say I had all of his veins, his organs, his skin, his blood, whatever it is, on different layers inside him, and I want each one of those to be a feature, I would again do that to each one of those layers, assigning them and rendering them out, assigning them and rendering them out. And then I could play with that later. It gets very complex the more you want it to look a specific way, the more parts you have. It can be very, very complex, especially when you get into, 35 parts that you have going on inside here and all these different things you want to happen. Okay, so once those are rendered out, I would also render out like a beauty pass of what the character looks like, so with some skin and whatever else. What I did is inside of Nuke, you just hit R inside of Nuke and then you can find them. So here's my wavy lines, here's my X-ray, and here's transition. I would just click on all three of these and it would allow me to bring them in, and they would be listed here, here, and there. Now I'm not going to show this inside of After Effects because it's pretty much the same, or same thing in Photoshop. But what I did here, just so you can see the end product of this. So I hit play. And you can see how he's kind of like zooming or like fading into the screen. Okay, so there he's kind of like warming up. Like he's been, I guess, Star Trek transitioned into it. Beamed. That's what they call it. Okay, so here's how I did that. And it looks crazy complex. It's not terribly complex. So the first thing I want to do is take all three of these and put them into one image. Okay, many ways to do it. I wanted to go with kind of like the most straightforward way. Straightforward to understand, at least. Let me put this up here. So in Nuke, if you just click in Nowhere's Land and you hit Tab, you can type in anything and it'll pull up whatever we're looking for. Okay, so for this I needed a copy. So let me just drag these over. I'm just going to copy them, paste them. So I want to combine these two items together. I click on this one, hit 1. I can see that item there. There he is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit K for copy and just bring these together. So I just connected the arrows here. So what this is going to do is it's going to take this information, copy it into this information. Okay, so now if I click on this and hit 1, I'm going to say I want to copy the red channel, black and white, so red is any one of those, and I'm going to assign it to just say the red channel here. Okay, so now what that does is if I click on this image and I hit R, I can see there's the red channel, right? So there's that image. If I take this one and I hit K for copy, drag this into the line, and then I do the same thing. So I say I want to copy the green channel to the green, and then I hit G here. So you'll see that red is the lines, G is this one. Now what I want to do is make this my blue channel, and by default it just automatically does that. Okay, so if I go R, G, and B, you'll see that I've successfully put all three of these into different channels. Alright, so now the benefit of this is that at any point I can do anything I want, and as long as I have those red, green, blue information, I can recall that and use it for whatever. So just to show, I'm going to make a constant. All the menus or all the items are here, so constant is right there. Basically it's just a solid. So if I go to my color wheel, pick a color, green, sure. And let's say that I wanted to cut this out. So what I can do is take this information and I can copy that into this. So what I'm going to do is take my red, green, blue, and I'm going to copy them into different channels. So I'm just going to make my own channel here. I'm going to call it alien.ch1 and hit yes. Make a new one. alien2.ch2. Make a new one. Don't knock the microphone over. Okay. So now what that does is it takes all of this information and piles it in here. I could have started off with this and copied it, but this gives me the ability to change this constant anytime or do different things with how it's going to be set up. Okay, so now I view this, so I'm hitting 1. Okay, there's my color. If I come up here, I can look at alien, alien 2, alien 3. Okay, so all that information is now copied into this constant. So let's say I go to glow. Okay, so the whole thing is glowing right now. I can go to my width channel and say I want to use alien 2 as my width glow. Okay, now this doesn't really look weird or look right because I'm basically seeing everything. So what I'm going to do also is I'm also going to copy in, I believe it's number 3, and I'm going to put this in as the alpha. Okay, so now if I go here, I hit A for alpha, I can see what the alpha channel is. Then I'm going to come down to this, I'm going to say pre-multiply, so it cuts it out. So now what this does, this is just copying channels. The same thing you would do in Photoshop. If you made a channel and you copied it into a new document, copy this into a new document, copy that, and then you could recall them and use them for other stuff. This pre-multiply, basically because I've assigned an alpha to this, basically just cuts it out. It actually applies the alpha channel. So now when I go to the glow, and I crank up, let's say, the size of this glow and the brightness of it, it's only glowing in that specific region. Now I can do other stuff too. Let's say that I wanted to pull something else in here. Okay, so let's go to back to that. Okay, so here, I did this one a little bit differently because I copied it right into the constant. This one I didn't, I copied it after. But I can grade stuff. Yeah. So I'm going to add a merge here. And this is another tool that you could use. So if I go to this pre-multiply and I'm going to merge it with something else. So right now we're basically seeing this one, which is that transition. So I can merge it with these wavy lines. Okay, now I'm going to view this, and then you'll see that because this goes from here to that, it doesn't go to the glow. I'm not seeing the glow on there, but I am seeing the wavy lines. Now this looks odd because, you know, we copied this in here. Can't we just reuse it? Yes, we can. If I drag this back onto here, and I go to my merge, and I say that I want to copy my alien, you'll see how it drops it right in there. Okay, so it's hard to see because the two lines are there, but I just wanted you to see what it's doing. All right, then I can just take this glow off, add the glow after, and then change this glow's width channel to, let's say, alien 1. And alien 1, oops, is the red channel, which is the lines. Now this is also a cool thing about this. If I go here and I say, well, that's a stupid name, I can say rename this alien wavy. And then what that does is further down the list, when I get to the glow, alien wavy, even though it says CH1, it's still alien wavy. And if I delete it and oh, it did update a second ago. There we go. I broke something. I rewound, if that's what happened. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the glow. We can take this brightness up. And you'll see that it's just glowing on that one channel. It's not glowing all the channels, just the wavy lines. Or I can make it channel 2, which would be the X-ray, or channel 3, which would be the transition one. I'm going to shade it again. Let's see, green is my transition. So I'm just going back to the green. I just didn't want to name them the same thing, so I think if I go that. There we go. So that'll make things happier. Cool. Now, instead of this being a constant here, I could have actually brought in my original footage and use that as how this thing comes in. Now, because they're all kind of tied together, if I rewind this and hit play, because that transition one is my alpha channel, as that one builds up, it's showing me all of those. And then I have this kind of like glowing feature kind of running through it. Okay, so again, you can create some very cool stuff. The benefit of doing this in Nuke versus Photoshop versus anything else but Nuke is that this setup, once I'm happy with how this looks, I can copy this whole thing and paste it. So just Control C, Control V, replace these items here, and I'll have a brand new chunk. Or what I could do is just go into like this constant, give it a different color, and then I can show the client version 1 or version 2. And I could even merge these two together. So I hit M for merge, I grab the A there, the B there, put that on top of it. And then I get that look like that. Okay, so you can do lots of different things like this. If you had something again with multiple parts, like this alien had hearts and bones and whatever else, each one of those I could have this kind of transition, set it up how I want each one of these to be revealed, merge them together with the rest of it. When you merge something, A is on top, B is on the bottom. And then just like Photoshop would have, there's different ways you can merge something. So this is just over, so it's just on top of it. But you could multiply. You could copy it. Well, copy's not going to do anything there. You could exclusion. You could plus it. Right, so now it's a little bit more glowy than it was a second ago. Okay, and you can really look at this as an asset-based thing where you're just kind of building up elements. The one part I didn't show over here, I actually have some particles for the character. So here's the character running, and these particles are coming off of the character. Now this is cool because, I mean, it looks like a huge setup. It's not, again, terribly too difficult. It's just a matter of understanding what's doing what. So this is the color of the particles, or where the particles are being projected. So basically this is like I've created a ramp just like I've done inside Maya, inside of Nuke, that limits the particles to just project from the feet. And the way it does that is that I've actually brought in the geometry. Like there is my 3D alien running. And with that texture on there, you'll see that he is that transition. And I have a particle emitter. There it is. Just emitting from the feet. I've added some drag, some gravity to it so it pulls it up more. I've given it a little bit of lifespan. And then I've piped all this stuff into a scene that would then get rendered out just to create that asset and then merged on top of my other one. Okay, so there's a lot you can do with this. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out. There you go. I don't know why that was disabled. A matter of figuring out how you want that story to be told. You'll see in here I've very subtly added those wavy lines. He still has that X-ray effect and that transition that keeps him kind of glowing upward. And then if any of these changed, like you didn't like the animation or the camera angle, once you render it out, as long as they're the same name, they just pop right back into place and everything works good. If it's a different name, you can obviously redirect it. You do want to try to keep your graphs flowing nicely so these things are not bunched. There's some sort of structure to how these things are laid out. So in this case, you can see there how I have the A's on the one side and then the B's are on the other side. Okay, and that just helps to keep you organized as far as what's going on. This here where I did do this A and B together, typically you don't want to do that because it can be confusing. So what I will do is I'm actually going to put in a dot node. And what this allows us to do is just, if someone's looking at our stuff, they can easily see what's going on. There you go. So they can see that I'm pre-multiplying the same item right there. Okay, you can hold control and also add dot nodes, or you can add one and then connect it to it. Okay, so you want to keep your stuff nice and neat. So that it's easy to follow, you know, where stuff is being connected into. And then what's also cool is that because these right here are basically the same, obviously you could switch them out for different pieces of material or whatever you want to do. But if they were the same, you could just connect it to one and it works exactly the same. And that way you don't have to have two of those listed here, it's just one listed. And again, one of the benefits of Nuke versus other programs. Okay, so that's how you do just a basic comp, taking some of those passes and adding them in there. You could also do an ambient occlusion. You could also do any number of things to add different effects to it. Whatever kind of pass you would create inside Maya, you could just bring that in. So if you had some other kind of crazy pass, utility pass that did something specific, you could have that come in there too. Some people will create like a noise pass in here that kind of generates noise randomly throughout that, just so they have something a little bit more fluid to kind of bounce around inside their character. Again, something else you could do. Look at it in Photoshop terms of what do you want to look like as a still, and then we'd apply that to an animation. Okay. Now to get this out of Nuke, what we do is at the very end of this, we add a right node. Oops. You have to make sure the right node is clicked into the right spot. There we go. Okay. And on the right node, because we have an animation, we click on the folder, we put it in a spot, so Sarcona alien run, and then I put dot pound 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 dot tiff. And what that does is it'll take my rendering and it'll render it out as a tiff sequence. If I don't put the dot pound pound pound, it will not render it out as a sequence, it'll just render a single image. Then I hit render, I say 1 through 75 is what I have. And then this will go through and it'll render out frames 1 through 75. Now it's not updating anything. I might have something off, something I was playing with. I don't know why it's not updating. Let me read that back in. Sarcona, Alien Runner. Nope, he's there. Okay. It just wasn't updating in the viewport. And then I could bring that in After Effects and make it into an actual QuickTime that I could then play. And again, all the stuff is still here. If I come back and make changes to one piece, very easily I could just change those pieces, rewrite it out. So that's the great thing about node-based compositing, is that you have this ability to work very, very fluidly. You're able to take chunks of data, and then basically, if I wanted this over on this side, I could just merge it in. I don't have to pre-compose it or anything like that. I just make a merge node, connect in this line, and it's done. Sweet. All right, so that's how you can use some of these passes inside here to do that. Again, multiple cameras, you would do the same thing. Do it for one, and then you can copy the whole setup for all the other cameras.